Have you ever felt kind of tired or achy or just off, even when you think you're doing everything right? Well, the culprit might be hiding in plain sight. We're talking about sugar. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on sugar's hidden connection to inflammation, that internal fire that can seriously impact how you feel day in and day out. So how exactly does something sweet turn into this internal fire? We're going to follow the clues. First, we'll look at sugar's direct link to inflammation. Then we'll zoom in on fructose. From there, we'll see what goes down in our gut, how that mess triggers a body-wide alarm, and finally, and this is a big one, we'll see why not all sugars are the same. Okay, so before we can really point the finger at sugar, we've got to understand what we're even accusing it of. What is this chronic, low-grade inflammation that everybody's talking about? Right. This is not like when you sprain your ankle and it gets red and puffy for a few days. No, think of this more like a smoke detector with a low battery that just keeps chirping forever. It's this constant, simmering, low-level activation of your immune system that never really shuts off. And over time, that's linked to a whole host of chronic diseases. All right, let's get into the direct connection. We usually think of sugar as just, empty calories, something that gives you a quick rush and then a crash. But we're going to look at it in a totally different way, as an active ingredient that can literally provoke your body's defense systems. The key phrase here is molecular trigger. This means sugar isn't just a passive bystander. When you have too much of it, it gets inside your cells and physically flips a switch that turns on the body's inflammation machinery. But to really get this, we need to be more specific, because sugar isn't just one thing. Our bodies handle different kinds of sugar in very different ways. And when we're talking about inflammation, the real story, well, it starts with fructose. This slide shows you a huge fork in the road. See glucose on the left? That's like a universal fuel. Pretty much any cell in your body can use it for energy. But fructose on the right, that's different. It's got to be processed almost entirely in one place, your liver. And that can create a real traffic jam. And when that traffic jam happens, when your liver gets totally flooded with more fructose than it can handle, it starts converting that excess into fat. The fancy term for this is de novo lipogenesis, literally making new fat. But here's the kicker. These new fat molecules, these free fatty acids, they don't just sit there quietly. They can act as inflammatory signals themselves, starting the fire right there inside the liver. So the liver is part of the story, but the main event, the real scene of the crime, is actually your gut, home to trillions of microbes that make up your gut microbiome. This chart really shows you what's going on. A high-sugar diet is like fertilizer for the bad guys, the pro-inflammatory bacteria. At the exact same time, it starves out the good guys, the bacteria that help keep inflammation under control. You're basically changing the roster of your internal team to favor the troublemakers. And this imbalance, it's called dysbiosis, it has real physical consequences. It's not just about which bacteria are there. The actual structure of your gut lining starts to get weaker. The little proteins that act like mortar holding the bricks of your intestinal wall together, they start to break down. And this is the turning point. When that mortar starts crumbling, the wall isn't secure anymore. This is what people call leaky gut, and it means stuff that's supposed to stay safely inside your gut can now escape into your bloodstream. The perimeter has been breached. And this is the exact moment a local problem in your gut blows up into a full-blown, body-wide state of emergency. The alarm bells are about to go off. Everywhere. So, what's actually leaking through? Well, one of the biggest offenders is a piece of the bacterial cell wall called lipopolysaccharide, or LPS. Now, when LPS slips out of the gut and into your blood, your immune system doesn't see it as a small issue. It sees it as an active invasion. Okay, this next part is basically the molecular smoking gun. Here's how the alarm gets pulled step by step. First, that LPS that escaped binds to a sensor on one of your immune cells. Second, that sets off a chain reaction inside the cell. Third, that reaction flips the master switch for inflammation, a protein called NF-kappa B. And finally, that master switch marches into the cell's command center and orders it to start cranking out inflammatory proteins. And what are those proteins? They're powerful chemical messengers called cytokines. The names sound complicated, TNF-alpha, IL-6, but you can just think of them as the body's screaming alarm bells. They shoot all through your body, telling every single tissue that it's under attack, creating that constant low-grade inflammatory state we talked about. Now, what's really cool is that we can actually measure this invisible internal battle. Those alarm bells, the cytokines, they signal the liver to make something called C-reactive protein, or CRP. And that's what a doctor can measure in your blood to see how much inflammation is going on. It's a direct readout of how loudly those sugar-triggered alarms are ringing. So, after all that, it would be so easy to just say, okay, sugar is the enemy, got it. But hold on, because the story has a really important twist. Where that sugar comes from matters a lot. Just look at this. It's night and day. Studies show that sugar from things like soda does nothing to lower that CRP inflammation marker. But adding whole fruit to your diet, it can actually decrease CRP. Why? Because an apple isn't just sugar. It comes packaged with fiber, vitamins, and all these other compounds that completely change how your body handles the fructose inside. So let's just trace that whole domino effect one last time. It starts in the liver with too much fructose. That messes up your gut, which leads to a leaky intestinal wall. Then, bacterial toxins escape into your blood, triggering a body-wide inflammatory alarm. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all, the package that sugar comes in, a can of soda versus a piece of fruit, changes the entire story. So that leaves us with this final thought. We just followed the trail from a single molecule of sugar all the way to a body-wide state of alert. If this is what's happening on a biological level, what is our modern food environment screaming at our bodies every single day? What message is it constantly sending to our immune systems?